Welcome back to another episode of Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines audio podcast. I'm your host, hashtag one time. And on today, we are diving in to a topic that I believe everyone is confronted with at some point in time in their life. Yep, it's faith versus our fears. When your faith has taken a hit and life is stacked up against you, the moment when that fear, the moment when that fear creeps in and it tries to control you. Well, today we're going to break it all down. Why fear always seems to show up when faith needs to be present. And when you take a hit in your faith and with your faith, what we need to do about it. But before we get started, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell and check out in the description the link to our QR code to order Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines t-shirts. Yep, we need to stay in the fight. I appreciate those of you who have ordered and continue to support the podcast in that way. All right. Let's get into it. And it's kind of befitting today that it's a Sunday and I want to talk about this topic, but I want to talk about it because right now it's ringing clear to me about how I need to strengthen my faith and what to do when that ugly fear shows up and tries to control. One thing about fear I can say is it causes you to thrive on the unknown. And let's just be real about it. We don't always have the answers when we're going through a trial or when we're behind enemy lines and when fear shows up and knocks you upside your head. Faith reminds us that we can keep going. But fear, it also reminds us of we're human and sometimes we go through in our mind the battle of the doubt. Yeah, that fear, it'll make you freeze up. It'll make you freeze. But faith can tell you that you can move on. And I know many people out there, you'll say, well, I've always had faith. Well, I believe that we must always have faith. We must always have it because you never know when you're going to be behind enemy lines and what you may be up against when you're behind enemy lines. I one of my favorite female actors is the mother of Dre on Blackish, Jennifer Lewis. Her latest quote, I heard her quote this and it hit home for me. And she says, it's when you're at your hardest hit, that's when you mustn't quit. Trying to absorb that blow of your hardest hit, when your faith takes a hit and it looks like it's all crumbling down and there's no way out. I'll give you an example of how I had to dial up my faith during COVID. And many of you have heard me tell the story of when I was diagnosed with aggressive bladder cancer. I thought it was the end. I thought that was it. But somehow I started to believe in my own healing and my faith showed up. Was I afraid? You better believe I was afraid. You better believe I had the fear. But having the faith and resetting my faith to believe that I was going to be okay was a decision that I had to make. Yeah, when you decide that you're going to keep going, when you decide that you're going to keep the faith, when you decide that you're going to win the battle behind enemy lines, when your faith shows up, it is because we make a decision on who gets the last word. Our faith or our fear. And here's why fear is always present. One, because it's a part of life. It shows up when we're about to step into something great, when we are really being hit hard and we are going through the most heinous trials, the hardest times in our head and in our mind, and we begin to doubt ourselves. That's when fear shows up. And I'm sure many of you know this, but our fear is only a manifestation that we're going in the wrong direction. Instead of believing in what could go wrong, it's very important that we shift our mindset to what could go right. And I'm talking personally about me at this particular time in my life. And so here's when we need to believe. Here's when we need to have the faith. Here's when we need to keep the faith. Every single time that fear knocks on the door, somebody was telling me the other day some very encouraging words, and I took them to heart. And so I acted on them. He says, write down 6 things that you want to happen. I sat back and in my mind, lots of things begin to race in my head. And I thought to myself, one of the first things I need to do is I need to be grateful for what I have right now. Oftentimes, we're not even grateful for what we have, because when fear shows up, when the fear shows up and sits on your shoulder and tells you that you can't do it, tells you that you won't win, it tells you that this is the hardest trial, this is the last one because you're done, that's it. But our faith needs to show up oftentimes in life, wherever you are in your life. Your faith needs to show up. Our faith needs to show up when you get that bad report from the doctor. That's when your faith needs to show up. When you ain't got no money at all, when you don't have any resources, or you believe that you don't have any resources readily available to you, that's when your faith needs to show up. When you have a relationship, you may have a relationship that's falling apart, and it reminds you that it's over. That's when your faith needs to show up. But I believe that our faith is the bridge between where we are and where we want to be. It doesn't mean that everything is going to be easy throughout our life. Oh yeah, you can feel like you got holes in the pail. You can feel like that everything is leaking out. Your sanity is leaking out. Your mindset is shifting. Doubt has creeped in, and it is starting to attack everything that you believe. It's at that moment that your faith needs to show up. And here's why people struggle. Here's why I've struggled with having faith all the time, or having it in hard times. Let's just be real and honest. Let's just keep it 100. When things are bad, and I know I ain't the only one, but for this sake, I'm just going to act like I'm the only one right now that has or has ever had a hard time keeping the faith. But let's be real. Let's be honest. When you lose faith, when you may be going through a difficult time, when things are bad, when it's hard to have faith, when you lose someone, when your plans fall all apart, when you feel like you're on an island all by yourself and your faith feels distant, that's when it's hard to have faith. But let me tell you something. Faith isn't about what we feel. It's about what we decide. It's like working out your muscles. The more you use your muscles, the stronger they get. But if you ever have a challenge, if you ever challenge it, or don't challenge the muscles or exercise the muscles, resist having the doubt, you stay weak. If you're struggling with your faith, don't run from God or don't run from the source. Tap into that relationship in the divine order that you have. Don't isolate yourself. Read the room. No, I'm not talking about the greater room. I'm talking about the room that you're in. Read the room. What do you want? How do you want to proceed? What must you decide in order to keep going? Because the only alternative to not having faith is having fear. Is having fear. But listening to fear, having hesitation, when that creeps in, you don't have to let it win. We don't have to let it win. Faith and fear can't operate in the same space. You have to choose and decide which one leads your life. If this brief audio podcast version of Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines has helped you today, like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment. I'd love to hear from you. What's one time in your life when your faith had to show up? Let's talk about it. And hey, I've enjoyed our short time today. Don't forget to grab your Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines t-shirt. You can go in the description, either click on the link or you can scan the QR code on screen. Get your t-shirts, support the show, wear it as a reminder that you're building your faith. Until next time, everybody, don't forget, keep the faith, stay in the fight, and we'll keep on winning at life. Peace.